today I'm going to be talking about user personas. Alright, let's jump right in here. Personas are fictional characters that represent real users of a product or service. Understanding the users, their motivations, and their requirements helps in building user-centric products. That's where personas come in. Personas keep the concerns of a user in check at the forefront of every design decision. Creating user personas helps you keep your whole team aligned with the design process because personas are the go-to documents which ensure that every design decision is aligned with the intended user. But the real value of personas is to track the goals and motivations of people who will be interacting with the product or service. They also serve as a reminder to designers that they should stick with their target audience throughout the entire design process. Now, a lot of designers and design teams make the mistake of building personas without proper research because they think they know what the user needs. Personas should always be created with authentic data in mind. This can be achieved by conducting user research around your product. For instance, if you're designing a physician's office, you should talk to the people who would ideally be using that space. Learn more about the staff and patients before jumping into creating a persona. You can conduct this research in a number of ways, such as personal interviews. That involves actually talking to the physicians and patients. Or, if you're designing for a group that already has common needs, such as wheelchair ramps instead of stairs, you can research those specific topics online. Now, there are 4 different types of personas that I'll be going over today. Role-based and engaging personas are the most highly recommended, while fictional personas are not the best option, but they're still worth talking about. The objective of goal-directed personas focus on the typical process that users would prefer when using the product. This type of persona is useful when you've already done user research to determine the needs and goals of your users. In some cases, personas need to reflect what the users are like in their lives away from the product. This is where role-based personas come into play. They focus on the user's behavior rather than specific goals. And sometimes it's best to create engaging or dynamic personas that incorporate both goals and behaviors as well as psychology. Engaging personas focus more on the user's backstory. And fictional personas are unlike any other persona. They're completely fake and not based on actual research at all. This can sometimes work if the design team includes people that would be considered users of the product. However, this method is not recommended. So now that we've had an overview of the 4 types of personas, I'll be going into more detail about how to create each of these. The objective of goal-directed personas is to examine the process and workflow that the user would prefer to use to meet their objectives when interacting with the product or service. In other words, you focus primarily on this user's goals. You can create a goal-directed persona by defining who the persona is based on research that has already been completed. This includes goals, attitude, motivations, and pain points. So first, you will define the scenario. Describe when and where and how the story of the persona takes place. Think of this as a narrative. Then, define the goal. Think about what the persona needs to achieve. When the goal is met, the scenario is over. Now, the objective of role-based persona is to examine the behavior of the user. These personas are also created from research with goals in mind, but they primarily focus on how the user acts. You can create a role-based persona by examining the roles of your users closely. Are they the caretaker of an elderly person, a parent of young children, or are they impaired? Consider what types of products this role will need. And consider who may be impacted by this role. For example, the parent of a young child may also be the caretaker of an impaired elderly person. So you'll create business goals based on the needs of these roles. Think about what these users need and what will improve their experience with your product. And sometimes it's best to create engaging or dynamic personas that incorporate both goals and behaviors as well as psychology. Engaging personas focus more on the user's backstory. The objective of this kind of persona is to inform an emotional connection using backstories. Engaging personas are the most dynamic as they involve aspects of both goal-directed and role-based personas. You can create an engaging persona by determining the goals and roles of the user. Think about a background story that may be relevant to the user. For example, the parent of a young child may need to take off work in order to take the child to an annual checkup. And consider how the user may feel and what emotions may come about while involved in their roles or trying to accomplish their goal. For example, the parent in step 1 may be in a hurry, or they may be trying to call a babysitter while waiting to be seen by the doctor. Fictional personas are based entirely on the design team's past experience or direct connections with the user base. Now, this is not a recommended approach for a complete persona, but it might be insightful to form a foundation of what you think the users may be like before conducting research. Fictional personas can be created by using any of the previous methods, just without basing them on actual research. And again, this method is not recommended because you won't be basing the persona on what real users want or need. Because they're abstract, personas have been misunderstood and misused over the years. They get created and they often fail for a number of reasons. Personas do work, or more accurately, they often work. But people have the great ability to generalize from a single observation, and that's where personas go wrong. A failed persona is often the largest barrier to the success of a product. Those who have seen them fall by the wayside without having any meaningful impact on a project often write personas off as a silly waste of time for the rest of eternity. But in order for personas to work, people have to really believe in them. You must include your entire team in the process of creating the personas, otherwise nobody will understand the effort that went into their creation and nobody will see the value in actually using them. It's important to remember that personas are not a one-size-fits-all tool. They should be used with a specific, well-defined goal in mind. People often want to reuse the same persona for different goals, but that is not how it should work. If you have a list of goals, you should have various personas to go along with each of them. Personas may be fictional characters, but they are important nonetheless. Good personas are detailed. They define goals and give an insight into the user's wants and emotions. Now, I'll go over some tips and tricks for creating an effective persona. Tip number 1, use real names. It may look like a very tiny detail, but naming personas makes all the difference. Stay away from John Doe, though. The real name evokes empathy. For example, Julie is a fictional name, but the character is realistic. People like her really exist. Tip number 2, base them on research. Your end users are real, so the personality should be backed up by research. It should represent who your users are, what are they trying to accomplish, what thoughts drive their behavior, and what motivates them to take action. Tip number 3, use real pictures. Sure, it can be stock photography, but make sure it's a person. Choosing imagery that reflects your persona builds empathy. Tip number 4, journey mapping. A journey map shows your user's journey with their product step by step. Creating this along with your persona could be extremely insightful. Now, let's talk about some roadblocks. One major roadblock designers find is talking to users. They often build the entire product on unchallenged assumptions or old notions of product use. This raises another important question. Should creating personas be an iterative process? Absolutely. As the product will grow, your target audience might change, so there's no point in keeping the old template. A wrong or incomplete persona can lead to building a bad product. As a best practice, make persona building an iterative process, just as every other design process, and allow your user personas to change with time and the needs of the product. Creating personas will help you identify with and understand the users you're designing for. Personas make the design task at hand less complex, and they guide your ideation processes, and they'll help to achieve the goal of creating a good user experience for your target user group. So now that we've established what a persona is and how to make one, what does the final product look like? Personas can look different depending on the type of information you want to display. If you look up persona examples on Google, you'll get a variety of examples to help you get started. So what's good about this example? It shows real data. a real name, age, job status, hobbies, and a photo. It has a narrative backstory with information about the persona to build empathy. It shows common personality traits for this persona type, and it clearly lists the goals and expectations of the persona. It clearly shows likes and dislikes to keep in mind as well. So I hope this gives you a better clarity of the purpose for building personas. As a recap, personas are fictional characters that represent real users of a product or service. Creating user personas helps you keep your whole team aligned with the design process, and because personas are meant to be the go-to documents which ensure that every design decision is aligned with the intended user. So what kind of experience have you had with personas? Let us know in the comments below, and if you liked this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content from Absorb Media, hit the subscribe button and leave us some comments to let us know what you'd like to see in the future.